Leeds, Leeds, Leeds. What is happening? Welcome to Working Hours, an oral history podcast about a place called Leeds, a time called now, and an activity called work. Working Hours wants to record 1,000 loiners over the course of this, the most important decade in the history of the human species, and ask them about what they do all day and hear how they feel about it. My name is Simon, and this is all my fault. My mission here is to try to map out what my city, Leeds, a city that has declared a climate emergency, did during humanity's biggest emergency. On Working Hours, we hear how loiners have, are, and will be coping with our multiple and expanding crises during their day-to-day working hours. Can we turn things around? We'll find out. To tell this story, I need loiners like you, dear listener. I need people in Leeds or people from Leeds to come on this podcast and just tell me what they do all day and let me record how this affects us. Thank you for listening. What did you want to be when you grew up?
So interestingly, I wanted to be a vet when I was growing up. Always loved animals, and I actually, obviously I'm not a vet now, but one of the reasons why I never actually went down that route was because in my head I felt like you had to get biology as an A, to go, because it's that type of subject. And I got all A's and A stars, and I got a B in biology at GCSE. So then I was like, no, I'm gonna change, and I'm gonna do something different. So yeah, originally a vet, which I don't think I've ever talked about publicly actually.
So it was just that one mark that put you off?
Yeah, and then I was like, I got it in my head.
Can't do it now.
Yeah, can't do it now. Well, because you have to get like A's at A level to then go to the right universities. And I just thought, well, that's obviously not possible if I got a B at GCSE. That was how my head worked. I mean, clearly...
I can't resit and do another.
Obviously, I can't do any of those things. I was like, no, next.
So what did you go to next?
So then I went to do some work experience while I was at school in a law firm, and really liked the idea of being a lawyer, and then started researching being a barrister. So quite the opposite to being a vet, and also really unique, traditional, quite unorthodox route to law, because not a lot of people train in that way. So I trained as a barrister to start with. I went to the Inner Temple. I was a member there, was called to the bar in 2010. So I actually have a picture with my wig and gown on, believe it or not. And that whole process was incredibly difficult, but equally really rewarding. And I think even to this day, it's one of the best things I've ever done. However, I'm now a solicitor. So the difference between a barrister and a solicitor is essentially that the barrister gets called to the bar and they do the bar course. So you're, as a profession, you tend to be more in court. You tend to be more of a niche expert in a particular area, whereas a solicitor will deal with the general public. They'll do the advice and prep all the trial cases, as well as all of the other types of law. So for me as an employment lawyer, I actually realised that I could be a solicitor and do the work of a barrister. So in some courts you have to be a barrister, you have to have high rights of audience, but I didn't need that. So I cross-qualified in 2013, and it was really challenging actually, because I'd always wanted to be a barrister. So kind of making that decision to not then pursue that anymore. And when you qualify as a barrister, you have to do a thing called a pupillage. So it's basically like your training year. And I got offered that in London the same time I got offered to cross-qualify in Leeds. So obviously opted to stay in Leeds. Partly financial, actually, because the move to London I wouldn't have been able to afford it. It's quite elitist. I think they were offering to pay £12,000. Imagine, and you have to pay all your own expenses. I mean, that wouldn't even cover your rent, right?
Yeah.
So I decided to cross-qualify in a firm in Leeds, and then just stayed here. So yeah, I'm now a solicitor.
So that was what, 2013?
13, yeah.
So post crash and stuff. So I can see why. Yeah. I mean, I left London 2014 because I was just like, all I'm doing is working to pay rent here. You're listening to Series 5, Episode 21, and to my guest, Jodie Hill. This is another in-person interview recorded on the 8th of July, 2024. Hello, listener. So for this interview, I got to meet Jodie at her office in Bank House, the old Bank of England building in Leeds. It was great to see a building I have walked past in the street literally hundreds of times, from the inside for the first time. I'd really like to get more historic offices and buildings in Leeds to record interviews for working hours in, and I'd also like to remember to take more photos for social when I'm there, security policies permitting, of course. If you work in a historic Leeds building and you fancy getting some free social media publicity for your work, then email workinghourspod@western-studios.com to be on this podcast. It's free to take part. You get to prove what you said. You can customize your episode, and I'm not going to be ranting over anyone's episodes anymore. I would also love to do some walk and talk, some ride-along interviews, if anyone is up for that. Don't suppose any cabbies listen to this show. It would be amazing to record in Tropical World or somewhere similar. I'm starting to understand the reality of what I have done here now. This podcast boosts people innately, and that's what I should let it do. And I should let it boost Leeds too. It can't do either of those things if I'm ranting. For God's sakes, man, remember, you're British, right? Stiff upper lip and all that, old boy. What ho? I want this podcast to do that for other lawyers too. I want people to think about where they live and what they do intentionally with me just for an hour or so. How does where you live and what you do affect you? How does your cultural and employment environment affect you and how you think? How often do you actually get to reflect on these matters instead of ruminate on them? Is it true that you don't know what you believe until you've said it out loud? This project has let me appreciate Leeds so much more than all those previous years working and living in my home city previously ever did. I have found out more and changed my ideas about Leeds more in the last 4 years than I ever could have by working in 1,000 temp jobs around this city. Okay, let's crack on. Jodie Hill is founder and managing partner at Thrive Law. Jodie is a neurodivergent solicitor, consultant, qualified coach and trainer, author and campaigner. Jodie is passionate about employment law, mental health and well-being and neurodiversity. Jodie is a qualified barrister initially called to the bar by the Honourable Society of the Inner Temple in 2010. Jodie then cross-qualified to become a solicitor in 2013. Her mental breakdown in 2017, which Jodie now describes as her mental breakthrough, led her to establish Thrive Law in 2018. It was the first law firm in the UK founded with well-being and mental health at its heart. Today, Thrive Law, headquartered in Leeds with teams in London and the South West, provides employment law support to employees and employers, as well as outsourced HR and employment law support, training, coaching, and consultancy to businesses nationally and internationally. Mental health, well-being, and neurodiversity underpin everything Thrive Law does. In addition to being managing partner of Thrive Law, Jodie is also an active member of the Employment Law Committee at the Law Society, as well as chair of This Is Me Yorkshire, a mental health campaign focused on storytelling. Jodie regularly carries out one-to-one and group training programs and coaching focused on the workplace, covering key employment law and HR topics, all with the aim of developing progressive leaders and harnessing the power of people within organisations. She is also a qualified coach, having achieved the ILM Level 3 award in effective coaching. Right, let's do this. Episode 131 of Working Hours with Jodie Hill. Yeah, so the next question is, what do you do now? We've covered some of that. Mm-hmm. So you didn't start Thrive Law straight away? This didn't come about straight away. No. So what was the next step then? How did you get here? And now, I'll just say for the recording, we're in Bank House, the old Bank of England building. So I want to just note that for the recording because it's a historic Leeds building and that's what the podcast's about. So so how did we get to Thrive?
So we got to Thrive, again, classic me, quite an unorthodox route. So during my studies, I'd always struggled with anxiety and PTSD. I had medication, I had a way of managing it, I was doing therapy. And naturally, as a lawyer, you're a high achiever, you are in a very competitive environment. Your environment that you work in is also quite male-dominated. So there's a lot of challenges, both from a personal perspective and in the workplace. And it resulted in me in January of 2017 having a mental breakdown. And I went off sick. I wasn't sure if I wanted to be a lawyer anymore. And I was only 4 years qualified then. So I was in a place, actually, was I 3 years qualified? Yeah, I was about 3 years qualified. So I was really junior, so not in a place where I could really make a decision for myself, and also really wasn't very well. And it took for me to have several months off and realise that actually removing myself from that environment was probably going to be the only way that I could recover properly. But that whole thing made me really feel like I wasn't a good lawyer, that I lost my confidence. I didn't know, kind of lost who I was in the whole process. And I started looking at, obviously I had a mortgage to pay. I lived on my own. I had barrister debts to pay, all of this stuff costs money. And I come from a low income family and I'd self-funded everything. And so having the breakdown, it didn't stop the fact that I still had to pay my bills. Yeah. And all I've ever known is how to be a lawyer. That's how I've always earned my income as a grown up. Yeah.
So and all that training time and investment, like you say, like that's years of your life to do the thing that you wanted to do. Yeah. The idea of doing something else at that point is like, well, how many years is that going to take?
Yeah. And this is it. And I think ultimately, I knew I was a good lawyer previously, but because I was so unwell, I couldn't see the wood from the trees. Yeah. And until I removed myself from the environment and really could focus on getting better, I wasn't really able to see like what direction I'd go in. But what I knew was I had the skills to earn some income as a lawyer. So I actually consulted with a couple of firms. And what that meant was I could work when and where I wanted. I could choose the clients I wanted to work with, the people I wanted to work with. And quite quickly, I realised that the environment and the people that we work with are so important to our mental health. And I started to realise that I wasn't shit at my job. I realised that actually I'm a really good lawyer, and people were finding me on the internet going, where have you gone? Like, we want to work with you.
And you're a trained barrister. I mean, like, it's not just like you're just a lawyer who's sort of, I'll do some consultation, which should be valuable enough. But you've got that extra level of like, I've also been to the bar.
Yeah. So, exactly. And so, you think of it in that way, but like when you're in the moment, you're like, what can I do? Like, is this right for me? And I actually started to look at other law firms because I actually went for interviews at a couple of the big firms, and I got offered a few jobs, and something inside me was going, don't go there. This is not for you. And I think part of that was it was definitely fear of going back to that really dark place where I was, I'm lucky to be here, quite frankly. So part of it was that, and part of it was also the thought of, being back into that mundane cycle of, just churning work out and no purpose, no purpose behind it. So I rejected those offers and I continued on the consultancy route, and I got busy real quick. And I got to the point where I was like, there isn't a firm in the UK that is founded on principles of wellbeing, mental health, diversity, inclusion. There isn't a firm. It's always an afterthought. And this is obviously 7 years ago when I was going through this. So this is before COVID, before it was cool to work remotely, before it was something spoken more openly in terms of mental health in the workplace. So I decided in a moment of madness to set up my own law firm so it's probably the October of the year I'd had the breakdown in the January. And I was just on this like purpose-driven mission. And I just thought, well, what have I got to lose? I have a full client caseload. I have my health back. I'm still not great. And at this point, I'm still on medication. I'm still in therapy, but I'm stable. Yeah. And I have a sense of purpose. And that for me was so empowering to continue, to keep going. Yeah. And I really, as an employment lawyer as well, I didn't want someone else to go through this. And also I could see how I could help businesses prevent this happening to some of their key members of staff, you know, because often we lose people in organisations because we don't hear them, we don't see the signs. Yeah. So I decided to set Thrive up. So I applied to the Law Society, to the SRA for a licence in the October-ish time, I think it was October, November. And then in the December, it was actually Christmas Eve, I remember it really clearly, and I was in Mexico and I got an email and it was like effectively to the words of, you've got the law firm essentially. It doesn't say that, but that's how it said in my head. It was like, ta-da, Merry Christmas. And the reality was, I actually had to do it then. So I didn't have a brand. I didn't have, I'd never run a business. I'd never even been a manager. So at this point, I'm 29, and it was a bit of an upward battle from there, because the challenge I had was I was obviously still in recovery, but I really wanted to do this. So I started the process as soon as I got back, created a brand. I really wanted to call it Thrive Law, because I want everyone in the workplace to thrive. And so I was always thinking about my why. Why am I doing this? Let's stay aligned to that. And I wanted to headquarter it in Leeds, because that's where I'd been to university. I was actually born here, and then I never lived here, and then came back. So I've got this weird affinity to Leeds. So I launched it in the March of 2018, just me. And at the same time, I launched a national campaign to change the law. So essentially asking the government to force employers to mandate training around mental health. That was the first campaign. And that actually got picked up by national media, ended up in the news everywhere. I was all of a sudden shipped off to London to go on Sky News and all these things, which was really quite overwhelming. But equally, it really got the light shone on a really important issue. And then an organisation called Where's Your Head At started a similar campaign, and then they carried it on. So we had a really amazing traction with this. And I'm now actually currently working on a piece of law that is not the same as what we were campaigning for there. It's slightly more, but it's essentially looking to change the Health and Safety Act so that we can spot the signs sooner and mandate employers to ask the right questions in the right way, and looking at the right type of training and strategic support. So yeah, we're working on that as part of the wider mission. That's why I say me, I'm doing that. So the firm was born in 2018, and essentially was just me in Queen Square. Do you know where Leeds Beckett is? Yeah. Opposite Leeds Beckett, they've got a business hub. Yeah. So I joined there and had a couple of offices there, and then started to take on some staff. And now I've got a team of about 20 across the UK. So we have a London office, we have a team in Devon, and majority of us are in Leeds, and now we're in Bank House.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, and it's not a small office, is it?
No, so we share this with the client actually. So the thing with Thrive is that we want to work how people find out how people work best. So it's not about, this is our office and we do it this way. We're very collaborative and quite flexible. So we operate smart working. So you work when and where you want. Some of my team work from abroad. They work from their homes, wherever they want. And that's the same with our clients, like how do they want to work with us? So this particular client that we share an office with, we are their in-house legal, we do their in-house HR, and they had space and we needed a space. So we were like, let's work together. And so they can now just walk across to my desk and ask me a question, and it's all about working better with people rather than saying, well, this is how we've always done it. We're always looking to innovate, and that's what I love about having my own firm, is that when things get tough, we can all talk about it. It's psychologically safe to do that. When someone's struggling, we check in on them. Like, there's no stigma attached to that, which is really unusual for a workplace, especially a law firm. So as you can probably tell, I'm super proud of the team and where we've got to. We're now 6.5 years old, and only this year was over in Hong Kong delivering training to global clients that are some of the biggest names in the world. So, we've gone from this little tiny, broken person in Leeds to servicing globally, which is really quite an amazing feeling.
So, there's plenty of thoughts going through my head now from all of that. But I'll share this one. I've got this strange vision of one of the big workplace factory, like Temple Works or something, but just full of co-working.
Oh yeah.
All these people. So rather than one business having all these different departments, you have all these different businesses. They're just kind of doing one thing. Because another thing that and we might touch on this in the social media bit, but I think that because of social media and because of the constant need for content and so on, that marketing teams will become more film graphic, they will need in-house filmmakers, and most businesses will, in the same way that most businesses, when you get to a certain size, you need your own IT team. Loads of interesting stuff in there. I think more will come out as we go through the questions, and then we can jump back to other things as we wish. So I'll start us off with COVID. There's two parts to the COVID question that I really want you to think about. So the first bit, going into COVID, what that experience was like, whether it was managing everyone else's expectations, whether you were working too much, too little. I mean, obviously, you'd already had the previous experience, so I'm guessing you're going in with a certain mindset of, even if you're throwing yourself into work, you would have limits kind of thing. But yeah, how was that going into it? And then the coming out the other side, what was that like? What were the changes? What kind of changed permanently for you?
Yeah. So for us, going into COVID was obviously a challenge. However, because we were set up as a smart working remote firm, that meant that we had the ability to access all of our files on the cloud. So for us, because we'd already integrated everything from a technology perspective, we were actually in quite a good position to continue to support our clients. The challenge we had was that no one knew what was happening and everyone was reluctant to spend money. So we ended up we actually set up a free helpline, and over the several years of the various lockdowns and whatnot, we ran this free helpline, which actually served over 5,000 people for free, where we just basically answered questions. And obviously, being an employment lawyer, furlough was the biggest word out there. So I ended up working quite a lot of hours on translating what the hell furlough meant, because it was this new concept, and it changed every bloody week. So I said to my team, I said, look, we're in a position where we've got just enough income to pay their salaries, not mine. We've got just enough income to do this. We didn't furlough anyone. We didn't make anyone redundant. But I said to them, what do you want to do? Like, do you want us to do like a furlough rotation? Like, how do we want to do this? And every single one of them said, we know we can work out the answers to this. We can help people. We want to help. So we took the view that, right, we're in deep, and we're going to translate everything Boris is saying. We're going to do free helplines. We're going to support all our clients, and we're going to do everything we can to give as much information for free online as possible, so that we can help people bounce back from whatever this will be. Because at the time we didn't know how long it was going to last. So that for me personally was really challenging, because I ended up working like 6 or 7 days a week. I also didn't have my exercise. I couldn't leave the house. And I was used to being in a different city every day, meeting clients face to face. So for me, emotionally, that was quite difficult.
Did you throw yourself into the work?
Yeah, massively.
And there's nothing stopping you then, is there? So you don't.
I can't switch off. Literally can't switch off. And then actually, what I realised was everyone was kind of slowing down, doing like online quizzes and having all these which we did engage in. But I realised that everyone else was very slow in terms of their pace. They were slowing down. And I wasn't. And my brain wouldn't allow me. And it actually prompted me to go to the doctor, because I was concerned that I may be having some sort of breakdown again, because I was like, obviously I've been here
Why
before.
Can't I slow down?
What's wrong with me? Why is my brain so fast? Why can't I rest? Why is everybody just kicking back in their garden? Why can't I rest? So I went to see my psychiatrist, and I was diagnosed with ADHD with combined, so hyperactive and inattentive, which actually was really helpful for me, because part of me was worrying about what it was, why I was so different. And I've always had a feeling that I don't fit, and I'm a bit different, but I just thought it was a bit weird, to be honest. But actually that was really helpful for me, because it gave me an understanding of what was happening and allowed me to be a bit more at peace with myself. So what that also allowed was for me to get medication to help me. And that whole lockdown experience was incredibly intense. You know, we were only 2 years old as a business. I didn't pay myself for 6 months. I nearly, luckily we had the breaks for the mortgages and the car payments, but I literally wouldn't have been able to survive. I'd have had to fold the company. So it was really touch and go, and then being diagnosed as well. But actually, for me, the diagnosis was really positive, because it did allow me to then, I'm very kind of action focused. So it's like put a plan in place and work out, what I can do to support myself. And I suppose for us, the busyness of that, the goodwill from the lockdowns and all of the COVID times is definitely paying off. I mean, I was on the news all the time because I was available, and everyone else, a lot of people were furloughed.
Yeah.
So a lot of firms were like, we don't have time to do this. And I was like, I'll go. So it just got me quite a good name with the media, which was really helpful because, like, especially local media, they will just text me now and say, do you want to come on BBC News? Do you want to come on ITV? So I felt like that was really helpful for the brand.
Yeah.
And it really helped us to grow into the Thrive Law that we are now, because we did rebrand just after lockdown as well. Because we realised that actually we were growing into this different style of organisation where we were doing a lot more with larger organisations and not just in the local community.
Yeah.
So it's like a bit like mature. It almost forced us to mature quicker, I think.
But there's two sort of lanes, I think. I don't know, like my assumption, so I'll put the question to you, but and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but my assumption would be there's two big markets for that. There is the employment level, the individual employee who's like, this workplace is driving me crazy, or they're trying to drive me out or whatever, who would have a claim to make. And then the flip side of that is businesses protecting themselves against claims and going, right, we're big on this. What do we need to do? How do we make the workforce as happy as they can be without us them costing us more money again?
Yeah. Well, I suppose that with the employers as well, I suppose how I approach it with employers is, with an employee, I'm helping one person. With an employer, I can help change their culture to impact every person in that organisation. And so we can help prevent things like discrimination from happening. So I'm really passionate about the education and the culture piece, because I think when you educate managers and you work on the culture and the people strategy, that piece, people go to me, well, that's not being an employment law. I'm like, I get that, but I run my own business and I get what it feels like to actually be the owner. Yeah. There's a difference when you are being paid to advise someone and that you're advising and it's quite black and white. Yeah. That's not the case when you are a founder and you've been through it, you've had the challenges, you've had the ups, the downs, and not being able to pay yourself kind of vibes. You know how it feels, and you know the stress and the emotional pressure that it puts on someone. So I decided that actually that was an angle that I wanted to lean on, because I have got that level of empathy with the founders. And so now, even though I'm not doing loads of the advice for all of those organisations because the team do it, I've still got a really good relationship with those CEOs, with those founders, because they can just have a chat one-to-one, and it's not like, oh my God, is the clock ticking? Is, like the typical lawyer vibes where people get irritated and they feel like they don't have value. I wanted to really create something where it was value-driven and also having a wider impact rather than just reacting to problems.
Yeah.
Which is what happens a lot with lawyers. Most lawyers get involved when shit hits the fan. That's what happens, And the reality is, we don't. I mean, obviously, I can pick that up. I trained as a barrister. I can go to court. I can do that. But just because I can do it, is that where I should focus my time? Well, I think no. I think actually where I should focus my time is on how can we help businesses to be better in a proactive way, to reduce the risk of those claims, to reduce the risk of people leaving. And so it's not the same as, your ROI on that is different. It's not as, I don't want to lose this claim, so do what you can to fight it. It's actually, how can we prevent people leaving, the cost of recruitment and retraining, all of that is totally different to look at from an organisational perspective. And I think it's a better space. It certainly feels better for me to be in that space than just reacting to everybody's problems and being like hired guns. That's not really why people work with Thrive. Yeah.
Adding to one of your points, again, with a bigger firm would have an in-house law team,
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah, they would have people because they're doing stuff and they know that there's an expense. Yeah. It's one of those that as a startup or a small business, you're kind of like, that's going to cost a fortune. Yeah. But it's that thing of like, okay, but how much does not paying that cost you if it goes wrong?
You only know what you know, though, right? So you don't know what you don't know. So you're in that position of, well, until things go wrong, I didn't know I needed one. Yeah. And also, a lot of employment lawyers don't operate in the same way that we do. Yeah. So they will be more reactive because that's the nature of the legal profession for a lot of people. Yeah. But the reality is, if you can integrate the HR and the employment law together and have this more streamlined approach, you're much more likely to find the problems earlier and deal with them in a more effective way. Yeah. Not just cost effective, the human impact as well.
Yeah, well, I think there's a whole massive thing in recruitment that we could potentially get lost in. But and I've said this before on the podcast, I think it's problematic that, so much of work, but, you know, within society in general, is that lie thing. It's like, okay, lie is maybe a strong word, but the embellishment of like, you embellish your CV, then you embellish at the interview, and then the employer's embellishing how good the company is and all their perks, and like, because we're selling, and selling involves making things sound a little bit better, and so it skews with our expectations. And I think sometimes, you know, with my own mental health experiences, so if work's going okay, you can kind of stand your private life going a bit more awry than you could if both were, and vice versa.
Yeah, exactly. This is why I want to develop this new law, because essentially what the law looks at is psychosocial hazards. So rather than simply looking at what is the stress at work, we look at all psychosocial hazards that include home life, that include like how well defined is your job role, you know, things like this that cause people anxiety because they're not sure, am I responsible for this?
And how accurate is it?
Yeah.
So how many of these job roles now just describe things? It's like,
I don't do this job. Yeah.
Who is this person? I do this role, and I don't do any of those things.
Exactly. And this is it. So ideally, I mean, I'd like to see this country move towards a much more psychosocial friendly environment for workplaces, and the only way to really do that is, in my view, to legislate on it, because otherwise it's a nice to have. And so when you mandate it and enforce it, then employers have to do it, and then they get used to doing it. It's like with all the physical health and safety stuff, we do it because we have to. It doesn't necessarily mean they care, but I suppose you're going to have the employers who don't care anyway. That's always going to be the case, and the only way to get them to do it is to legislate. So yeah, actually finding out like what are people going through and knowing your team is really important. And that's something that we've really focused on at Thrive, is looking at how can we build a culture as we grow that stays authentic to who we are, but also allows people to work remotely but still know each other. And so, you know, using technology and using different ways of gathering feedback, using all sorts of different things, which I can share later on in terms of like all the different areas that we've covered. But I think it's something that organisations sometimes forget when they grow. So it's very much like a nice to have. It's, you know, like this week we're going to go on a full day walk as a team, and that for me is really important because we have to do stuff that's not just work. And when we don't spend every day in the office together, you have to be intentional about the time that you do spend together. And often employers miss that bit when they're growing or when they're scaling or when they're a startup, because it's like, well, I've got to work every day because we're growing. And actually building the team as you grow to grow with you is really important, because otherwise you'll get to a point where you're like, this is not the right team that I need anymore, because you forgot to develop them on the way. Yeah.
Let's talk about the coming out of COVID bit, and then I'm going to move us on to another bit, because otherwise I'll just take us in all these stupid different directions.
That's fine.
So, so the change coming out of COVID, was it just, I mean, was there any real changes for you? I suppose it helped with your mission because there was the big boost in awareness for mental health awareness and so on.
So coming out of COVID was, I suppose, for us still a bit of a challenge, because people are less likely to invest in the proactive stuff when they're struggling financially.
You didn't have a dip or anything? There wasn't like a...
Yeah, we had a huge dip in...
Because people were thinking of you as like, oh, you're the COVID people that explain furlough and...
No, not necessarily. So we had a dip because when we went into lockdown, people weren't spending money. They were like, well, we don't know how to deal with this or how long it's going to last, so we're not going to pay for support. We want to just get like what we can for free and see what's happening. So there was a lot of hesitation around investment in the people space because people weren't sure how many people they were going to have, you know, and even if they were going to do it wrong, they'd rather take the risk than waste what bit of money they had left on legal advice. So that's what I saw in the first bit, which is why I couldn't pay myself for 6 months, which is why I nearly had to fold the company. So we did take a huge dip, but by the end of that year, so I think it was our financial years to April, so by April the following year we had actually still grown. So the last 6 months we grew. In the first 6 months we made a massive loss, but in the last 6 months we almost got this kind of wave of work. And then also we had a lot of goodwill, so some people might have left their job and we helped them for free, and then they set up on their own. They were like, can you do our contracts, because we helped them. So we started to see this kind of, I suppose, wave of goodwill coming towards us. And we have grown the business every year between 50 and 30% every year, even with COVID and with no investors. So, we've done, I think, a good job with this, but it's one of those things that I don't know what would have happened if COVID hadn't have happened, because part of it was horrendous, but part of it also, I'm really good in a crisis. Yeah. I thrive in a crisis.
Sort of helped you define who and what you are.
Yeah, and it also forces the team as well to kind of go, who are we? Like, what do we stand for? Yeah. What's the thrive way of doing something?
It's the mission bit as well, going back to purpose. I mean, I don't know if you've heard this, but the 3 key things for making a good job: autonomy, mastery, and purpose. So you need some meaning, you need some say over what you're doing, and you need to be able to know that you're good at what you're doing, or that you can at least improve, that you're getting better, that you're mastering what you do.
Exactly. And this is it. And I think ultimately a lot of law firms don't do this because they have a mindset of, well, that person's really lucky to have a job in this law firm because everybody wants to work here. Yeah. So, we don't need to do the other stuff. Or they do the other stuff, but it's lip service because they actually don't make the time or the space for that person to join in on the other stuff. So you find that the cultural difficulties in a lot of law firms are quite similar. It's certainly shifted, I think, over the last few years because of COVID. I think COVID has brought to life the importance of people, and people have shifted in terms of their expectations. So what we're seeing now is a real want for flexible working, a real need for work-life balance, because people lost their work-life balance in COVID. They were all working in their living rooms from their bed in shared houses.
They lost their private space. They lost their home.
They did.
Workplace literally came into their home, not just being in bed at 10 o'clock at night on the BlackBerry or whatever.
Exactly. And people actually, to start with, it was a novelty and everybody liked it. We already worked from home most of the time. Some of my staff are remote workers. So for us, the biggest transition was the junior staff who'd never worked from home, because they like the comfort of being together and supporting each other.
Well, but they're back in the bedroom. Like, if I was a teenager and it's like, I'm in a workplace, I'm I feel like a grown up a bit now. And then you have to go back.
Or some of them were in shared houses. So imagine they all had to work.
You're living in a
bedrooms.
student house, working.
So what I noticed is that actually we had to be more intentional about supervision. So we had to change how we did supervision. And obviously we're a regulated company, so that's obviously very important. We had to change how we communicated. We redefined our processes to be more focused on remote. And actually, after COVID, we never really went back. The juniors actually work better at home now. But that's because we spent a lot of time looking after them and training them and listening to them and changing the processes to adapt. So now we've got juniors, like one of them I onboarded and she lives in London. She's never worked in the office and she's great. And so when people say you can't do it for juniors, you can. You just have to be more intentional, and you have to really think about what is it that is going to be the challenge, what's going to be the problem, where are the red flags, and try to foresee some of those things and tee it off first rather than waiting for it to go wrong. And actually you need a good culture for that, and you need really, really good communication, because if you don't have that person's going to feel lost. They'll probably make a mistake because they don't want to ask for help. So you have to create the culture first. And I think so many companies just went into lockdown, then never really reviewed it. And now they're going, right, everybody back to the office because it doesn't work. So we're seeing as a law firm, actually, because obviously this is my experience as an employer, but as a law firm, we advise people on this as well. And so we're seeing a lot of people being told you can't have that anymore, but they've been doing it for 3 years.
So what's the work justification for it?
Exactly.
Can you show me the productivity before and again? Like, can you prove this? Can it? Because otherwise, it's just an arbitrary change, isn't it? And you're making me unhappy.
And it's potentially, for some people, it might be potentially discriminatory if they're the primary carer, or say they're a disabled employee, and actually it benefits their neurodivergence. Then, if that is a reasonable adjustment and you're removing it, as a company, you're potentially in discrimination territory here, as well as the fact you might be failing to make a grant of a flexible working request. So there's these little nuanced areas that employers aren't always thinking about. So again, another reason why you get people involved up front is when you're thinking about your strategy, get lawyers involved earlier, because you'll probably spend less than dealing with the problem that then arises.
Exactly.
But COVID coming out of it was up and down, I'd say, because again, we were seeing a lot of people wanting to, so we obviously represent individuals. So we had a lot of COVID related cases, which was interesting, like people being sacked for being forced to work on furlough, and so suffering detriments and whistleblowing for health and safety reasons. So I feel like the work around them was really niche around COVID, you know. But then from that, the employers starting to go, actually, this is a bit of a talent war, people are going to leave, we need to invest in our people more. And I've noticed, and maybe this is actually me because what I stand for, and I'm very vocal about how important it is to put people first, but certainly noticed a lot of people first, or people first wanting, like companies wanting to be people first, approaching us and saying, can you help us do this? Because we really want to help our teams. So I think certainly after COVID there was a shift towards being more people first, and putting that to the top of the agenda from a mental health perspective, wanting to understand about mental health and neurodiversity training, wanting to do ED&I training so people could show up as their true self. So I think from my experience as a solicitor and a founder, certainly that's what I saw in the market. But again, is that skewed because of what I stand for? Or is that genuinely what other people see? I don't know.
Well, I mean, it's resonating with people, isn't it? You're still here and you're still growing. A 30% growth every year is not to be sneezed at. So I would say there's something in it. So culture. What is a good culture?
So on the point of culture, I think what makes a really good culture is a psychologically safe place, and that's different for every organisation. So what I mean by psychological safety is, do people feel they can show up as their true self? Do they feel they belong? Do they feel that when they challenge and ask questions, they're not judged and they're supported? Do they feel that when they make a mistake, that is dealt with in a way that is compassionate and supportive, and we got this together, rather than a blame culture? Because obviously sometimes there is fault and it has to be dealt with, but shouting at someone, berating them, telling them they're a piece of shit is obviously not the way to do it. So I think certainly for me, a good culture looks at those things. It also then goes beyond that and looks at, how do we grow together? So how do we learn? How do we grow? And I think you have to have all of those stages in order to create psychologically safe and a good culture. And what good looks like is going to be different for different organisations, because it depends on the values of the company. So the culture needs to align with the values. And so what we did was create a culture code. And that basically brings our culture to life by using images and phrases as to how we think our culture is lived. And that's not done by me. My staff did that. So they just say, this is just the Thrive way. And so that defines the culture. The culture is basically what your team say when you're not there. It's not what you put on the walls. It's not what you tell other people. And so I thought it was really important to create the culture code, but they did it, not me. And then they gave it to me to look at, and we finalised it together. But one of the things on there is like authentically weird. So we want everyone to be 1% more themselves every single day. But your culture will change. That culture wasn't the same when we first started. So you have to grow with the culture. You have to hear what people say. You have to ask your clients. You have to ask your staff. You don't reach a destination and go, oh, we have a good culture now. Right, tick, done. It's an everyday thing. And I think leaders have to lead by example. If you don't live the values of your culture, if you don't live by your culture code, if you don't demonstrate the behaviours that you would expect, how the hell can you expect your staff to do that? So you have to lead by example, even if it's hard. You've got to do it. And no one's perfect. No one gets it right all the time. But as leaders, we have to take feedback, and that's how we grow the culture and develop, because we have to be vulnerable and go, well, actually, I don't know all the answers. I'm not perfect, far from it. For me, that was part of understanding this was part of my journey, and really making sure that was something embedded in my journey as I grew Thrive, because I didn't want to lose who we were as we got bigger. Something I'm really, really passionate about. And it's really nice now to talk, like last week I did a talk to 150 lawyers or law firm owners about Thrive's culture, and I shared pictures of us living the culture, not just a list saying this is what we do, because there is a lot of this, and it quite frankly annoys me, because I feel like there's so many big companies that have a head of wellbeing, a head of ED&I and all of this stuff, and I'm like, but what do they do? Because you don't actually measure the impact of anything. You don't really know how your staff feel, and if you do know how they feel, you don't do anything about it. And so this whole piece, like culture, is defined by all of these things. You can't just say it's just wellbeing, it's just mental health. It's everything, and it's the DNA of your company, and that DNA is going to be different for every organisation. So what works at Thrive maybe a quarter of that will work somewhere else, but the whole culture is not going to be able to just be plonked into another law firm. It just won't work. So, but what that's done is it's allowed me to attract people who are aligned to that. So that not just staff, clients will come to me and go, do you know what happened the other day? Someone was really struggling with their mental health and they weren't performing, but we remembered what you said 2 years ago about this thing. And so what we did was we worked out what was wrong with their mental health. We supported them and guess what? Their performance improved. Whereas normally we would performance manage them because that's what the policy says.
Yeah.
That's what the company says.
Normally we would make their stressful life
more stressful.
Yes, because that's what we're here for.
Yeah, exactly. So it's nice to see that we attract the right types of progressive leaders, and that's really part of our journey, is continuing to help organisations with their culture as well as their people, because it's intertwined. Your people are your culture and your culture are your people. So if you have those working in silo, it's really difficult to know if it's probably not working, but it's really difficult to grow it and measure the impact, because you need your people to talk about your culture. And a lot of people will say, I don't know what our culture is. If you ask a lot of organisations, they'll probably say, we don't really know what that is. Why don't they know? Well, that's probably communication. So it's about looking at all of these areas, and some of it's from the top. Like I have all this in my head, and so I've had to be really intentional about that and get it out of my head into processes, out of my head into pictures, out of my head into meetings to the staff, so that it's not just me that carries that, it's everybody. And I think that's helpful when you grow, because I'm not training the junior. They have to train them in the Thrive way. And so if I'm not involved in that, I don't worry about it. I have no worries whatsoever. Someone recruited someone the other week and I didn't meet them before they were recruited, and that person was perfect. And I was like, well, that's because they know what is the right fit for us. So I think culture for me is one of the most important things. And if you get it right, you'll get such loyalty from your team, and also attract the right people. Because that's the biggest challenge in the market at the moment, is getting good people to stay.
Yeah, but so my opinions on the getting good people to stay. So one, pay, because the pay in the country is atrocious. Given the cost of everything, cost of living crisis. It's a wage crisis. It's like people are getting paid.
I had something on that actually though. So on pay, one of my staff joined me from a London firm. She joined me pre-lockdown. She took a significant pay cut, probably more than what most people actually get paid to work here. And she travelled from London 3 days a week pre-lockdown. She moved up here the week before lockdown, bless her. And then she stayed, and she's now had a baby, and she's having another baby. But the reality is, she moved not because of the money. Actually, she took a big pay cut. She wanted the culture, she wanted the values, and she wanted a family. And so sometimes pay isn't everything. And sometimes pay isn't everything. So that's one thing I would say. And the other thing now is flexibility and autonomy is so important for people, because pre-lockdown you could kind of say, well, you have to come in this many days. And whilst I do think having face-to-face time is important for culture, I do find it difficult to justify saying, well, everybody has to come in every day, because I'm like, well, but why? That's just stroking my ego. Or is that just because I have to pay for an office? Or is it actually because of the culture? I'm not sure, because if we're all on calls back to back all day, so actually instead we come in 1 day a week, and that's not mandatory. And on that day, there's no outbound calls. It's all internal meetings. So it's all stuff we do together.
Yeah,
and that's the difference.
Yeah.
So but I do hear your point on pay. I do think it is important, and it's hard for smaller businesses to compete.
Yeah.
I've had the similar thing where people from big law firms have approached me to come work for me, and they want the same salary, but they want the flexibility. And I'm like, you can't have both, because we don't charge what they charge. And we don't have the same culture as that. So we're not going to expect the output to be the same, because we care about your mental health. So you can't have both. And you have to decide what's more important. And I've had some serious conversations with some amazing people, but ultimately they've got a lifestyle where they need that ridiculously high salary. And, and we don't pay badly. It's just that we're based in Yorkshire, and we're a small company that doesn't require you to work yourself to death.
Yeah.
Because that's what most companies expect. It's really easy targets. You get, loads of time off, and that for me is important. And for some people, the money is more important. And it's about knowing who are the right people.
Well, as well, like these big salaries, they're that doesn't count all the hours they actually work for
Yeah.
that money, you know. And if you're like, I would expect, given your values, that you're, you know, if you have to wine and dine a client or whatever, not saying that you would, but using that as an example, or you have to go play golf or whatever, typical stereotypical lawyer things from films, like that would normally, for a big, okay, the expenses would be paid, but you're not getting paid for working that time. That work that's free work there that you're doing to get the paid work. That's big paid work, but you're still officially doing that.
You're
for
networking,
free.
aren't you? Yeah.
So I guess you kind of even though you're not paying the super high salaries, you're kind of paying more because you're expanding into those areas where it is the thing that you're expected to carry the cost for yourself. It's like, no, that's part of your work, we will pay for that.
Yeah, and also I think as well, if you worked out the actual hourly rates, say you worked out the hourly rate of someone who works in a big city firm in London, and they work till 2 a.m. most days and the weekend, and then you worked out how many hours you work at Thrive, because they work less hours, you actually earn more by the hour. Yeah. So there's a disillusion to the volume of salary sometimes, because you don't also consider the volume of hours. And so this is why I've been campaigning a lot with in the legal sector with the Law Society, and getting people to look at billable hours and these targets around hours, because actually it's really unhealthy to make people work ridiculous amounts of hours because it's not sustainable. It's not sustainable. So actually, when you work it out, if anyone's listening and they're thinking, oh yeah, but I need the salary, then okay, fine if you need the salary, but what happens when you then burn out and then you can't work? Is that paid for? Is that covered? And then they probably sack you because you're not working and you're no use to them anymore. So there is a real need
if you're still alive.
If you're still alive. Hello. But yeah, there is a need to kind of think beyond just salary, and I think certainly since COVID that is happening. People want to work where they want to work from, and actually you don't get a lower output from people. If anything, our team are less productive in the office, which is why we don't do certain tasks in the office. We only do like the collaborative type stuff where it's a meeting, or where it's stuff that doesn't require too much like alone time, because if you're doing a legal drafting document, you can't be sat in an office with 25 people or 100 people because it's so loud. Well, I certainly can't as an ADHDer. I'm like, no way, that is so loud.
And also space and people and other things
I'm
to
like,
do.
there's so much. There's like lights, there's noise, there's people chattering,
there's colours.
There's colours, there's something interesting happening there, so now I'm not going to do my job. So it's all way more exciting in the office, and it's also overstimulating. So certainly for me as an ADHDer, I find being in the office, I enjoy it when there's a few people in on occasion. But then if I have to come in regularly, I find it overstimulating, and I have to go home and I have to get a bath and I have to put the lights down and I have to just relax. And I never really appreciated that before, because I was always on the go and I never stopped. But because COVID, we had to stop a bit more. And then we've had this difference of working locations and actually feeling how it feels to work in these places. It's allowed me to be a bit more self-aware about what works for me.
I mean, I'd say the other thing that makes a good job and makes people stay is that, and I suppose if you had to fit it into one of the three, it would be a mastery thing, but the training and development and the experience. And you said initially that you designed, sorry, I'll just take the time, I've been going an hour, that you designed it with health and wellbeing, mental health and wellbeing within the design of the company. And obviously the company, you didn't sit down, design the company first and then, because it came out of work that you were already doing and it built from there. So, but there was a design intent in that. So
I designed the company because I'd set up a company as a consultant, so I was doing legal work as a consultant. But when I launched Thrive, I created a brand, and that's when I designed how I was going to create it. But that's been an evolution. So every year I've added things, I've changed things, I've evolved, I've integrated technology, I've created new ways of working. And so for me, what I created 7 years ago isn't what we have now.
So what are the kind of things that you have in place, or what are some of the things that you have in place now? Are you, like, does everyone have to do a mental health first aid course, for example, or something like that?
We actually do, So everybody's mental health first aid trained. We have a thing called a license to thrive. So when someone joins Thrive, you create a document that says like how you work best, what your challenges are. So it removes the labelling of a disability. So it's saying, how do we all work best? How do we all struggle? How do we all like to give and receive feedback? So we have this manual document that people input their information to, and then there's a bit about personality, like give me a quote that reflects you and that type of thing. And then that is shared, so in someone's onboarding they can read the other people's, because obviously if you're working remotely you don't see everybody. You might not even meet some people for months. So what I wanted to do was create something where people felt like they knew each other a little bit when they first started. And then once a year we get them out and we have a meeting and we'll just go through them and we'll sit and update them and talk about them so that we bring them back to life. And I've actually been working with a tech company who use psychometric testing to effectively help people communicate better. The tool is unbelievable. And we are now going to be merging this part of ours into theirs, so merging the two together. So you've got the stuff you're conscious of and the stuff you're not conscious of together in one piece of text. So if I was having a meeting with you, I could click your name, my name, and it would say, right, this is how you approach Jodie. She likes that she doesn't need loads of detail. Don't give her a spreadsheet. It won't say it in those words, but it will give you an idea of how best to approach me because of the style of person I am. And then in my document, I'm really specific about my ADHD needs, and I'm honest about that so that other people hopefully will do the same. But I mean, that's resulted in people telling me, even at interview stage, I have anxiety, I have dyslexia. Like, people are so open with me because I'm open with them.
People want to tell you about themselves.
Yeah.
They just need the opportunity.
And they need to feel safe.
Yeah.
So if you're vulnerable, they'll feel safe. So yeah, so we do the License to Thrive. We also do 360 feedback every month based on our values. So everybody scores each other out of 4, and then it's weighted. So there is a score at the end of the month that everybody gets. They get an individual score for each area, and then they get a collective score. And then both myself and one of the seniors deliver that feedback to people. And honestly, it is the most amazing feeling. Every month I get that. And there have been some challenges, but it allows you to address it straight away. And it creates a safe space to do that. But now I feel like, at least for about a year, every month I just go, oh my God, look how much they love each other. And they're all like, this person's really helped me with this, tell them they're, and it's really driven some positive behaviours because people are constantly reminded of the values and you're keeping it to life, bringing it to life. And our bonus structure's linked to it. So if you're a dick and you bill loads of money, you ain't going to get a bonus because you've got to score on the behaviours first. So you can bill £1 million. I'm not paying you a bonus if you're going to treat people like crap. So we have this in place. Fortunately, no one's ever scored below since we brought it in a few years ago on the basis that issues are dealt with straight away, then the score goes back up. So it's not. So the idea is that we don't wait for a year and go, oh, well, in January last year, you said this to so-and-so.
You were bad for a whole year.
Yeah, and it's like, actually, they weren't.
Are you any better this year?
Yeah, and appraisals, I think, are so outdated. And I actually have never had appraisals in any of my jobs. And so I just created this new way of doing things. And it allows us to look at things like learning and development is one of the focuses. One is networking, one's technical skills, one's behavioural skills. So we've got all of these different areas. Each month there is a focus, but every month it consistently asks first, what is on your mind? How is your wellbeing? Always the first questions. And that they have to write in how they feel. Now, when people first join, they just put, okay. And I'm like, okay, so you need to put more than that because we're actually going to be open here. And now everyone, sometimes I get a huge list of all these things. They're like, oh, I've been doing this for my wellbeing, been doing that. Or it might be, I haven't been making the time to do my wellbeing. Can we discuss it? And we talk about things that we can do together or how we can support them to achieve that goal. So that's something I'm really proud of because that's been going on for about 3 or 4 years now. And it's been developed every year and grown. And obviously integrating some of that into the tech is pretty cool. We also do wellbeing risk assessments every 6 months, so mental health ones. So again, using tech, we ask everybody to complete the online survey through this technology company. They then get an individual report, and the report essentially says, that here's your score. So it's personalised to them and it's anonymous, so I don't see that. And on that report, it essentially tells them the areas that they should focus on. So wherever they've scored the lowest, so it might be your stress levels, or you're not got good work-life balance, or it might be physical health, it might be hydration. So it'll tell them an area to work on and it'll help them with goals. And then it has like a Netflix of wellbeing, so it'll direct them to loads of videos they can watch to help them in that area. And then we do it again in 6 months and they see if they've improved. But as a company, I get a dashboard that essentially tells me in each area the average scores of everybody. So it'll say 65% of your team was struggling with sleep in the last quarter or the last 6 months. So then what we do as a team is I pick out the key areas that I think we need to work on. But rather than going, right guys, I'm going to do yoga every Friday and bring free fruit in, I say to them, okay, so this is what the data tells us. What do you think is the best place for us to work? Where do you think we should spend the most of our resources? And then once we've decided that as a team, the wellbeing committee go away and run some initiatives that are aligned with that data, so then we can measure it. And so that for me has been really, really helpful to understand, because how would you know if your team is struggling with sleep? How would you know if they're not hydrated? How would you know if they're sedentary for too long? All of these things are important when we understand stress, when we understand mental health. So that data for me has been really, really helpful, and as part of the growth strategy and like just with the L&D, everything. So we do that. We also do every month you can win holiday for making a difference to someone else. So part of the scoring that we do, you have to also nominate your MAD award. So it's not because they're mental, it's they made a difference. And then every month they can win holiday. And we do lots of like little initiatives like this throughout the year, but this is one that we do every single month. We do a lot around CSR. So we do a lot of charity, like pro bono work, planting trees and raising money for charity, because what we've realised is that has a real positive impact on people as well. It's that purpose
on the staff as well.
Yeah, that's what I mean. They like it.
We've done something that's like really good today, and it wasn't just
earning money.
And it wasn't just another contract or another, another piece of paper or a spreadsheet.
Exactly. And so we give paid days off for this. We also have paid days off for wellbeing. So 2 full days a year, you can take them how you want, if you want to split them into half a day but it's essentially 2 extra days leave, but it's not holiday, it's not sick pay. It's wellbeing day. So you have to, on that day, do something for your wellbeing. And what we do is we share a picture or a video or something that we've done on that wellbeing day with the team. So again, normalising looking after ourselves, normalising taking a break. So I had to lead by example on that one last week. So I took myself to a spa and I spoke about it online, and I said, look, for me, I find it really hard to do nothing. So I have to go somewhere to make sure that I actually do rest, and that's how I do it. Other people will go, like one person went to York and read a book in a cafe. They're like, never get to do that on the weekend because it's too busy, so went in the week. And it's about finding what works for you. I created a journal which is available on Amazon. I'll give you the link. But essentially that allows people to understand their stresses and their self-care. So what stresses them out and why, what about it stresses them out, so they understand their triggers. And then what makes them feel good and why, what about that feel good. And then within that, there's loads of different types of journaling. So whether that's body reflection or emotion reflection. So I created that a couple of years ago for the team, and then they were like, why don't you just sell that on Amazon? So I did. But it's stuff like this, like always thinking of tools. And now we work with organisations creating them for them. So they're saying, how can we keep this going? And especially organisations that aren't on tech, like factories where they're not on a computer. So all these apps aren't always helpful because they don't have access to it. It's quite nice to be in the process with a client at the moment, creating a 12-month learning and development plan where monthly we'll support the managers, and then we're also creating them a journal. And it's like, who'd have thought that that's what we would be asked to do? And they've come to us to ask for that.
Social definitely has a place of being journaling. Journaling's supposed to be really good for your health, for your mental health.
And reflecting and everything.
And for organising your thoughts and, giving you that objectivity that you don't really have from memory, because memory is so imbibed with your current emotions as much as your previous emotions. I'm thinking about trauma, and I'm thinking about confidentiality, and I'm thinking about vulnerability and openness, but also the safety and security of that. Like, obviously this is a very trust-based thing, and it's a trust that you build, that you work on, and you work on constantly, and it is working and so on. But it's not something that someone could just take and fit in.
Exactly.
Like, you've had to, you've really worked at this over time, over a long time. But there will be tests and stuff, and if someone was going to take this sort of thing, someone could easily hear this and go, right, we're going to do all of these things and put them in, and it could go horribly wrong. Like, what... have you considered those elements? I mean, obviously you have. You're in law.
Yeah. Well, this is why it comes back to the original point that I made about psychological safety. You can't do any of this if you don't have a psychologically safe workplace. So you have to really understand what those risks are first, and you have to deal with that first. You can't just go in and do all the fluffy stuff, as people like to call it, because actually, if people don't feel safe, it's no point doing any of this stuff because they're not going to engage.
Buy in, have you?
And they're not going to tell you if they're feeling unwell because they don't trust you.
Yeah.
So you have to build the trust first. So yeah, I agree. Absolutely, do not do all the things that we're doing if you're not sure of the psychological safety. And to improve the psychological safety, you really need to get to know your team. So you can bring in some of these things, but you have to have a strategy, and that's something we help people with on the basis that we need to know where they're at and what level. Like, every business is different, so we need to do a diagnostic and understand what are the challenges, where are they at, what have they done so far, what was the impact of that, where are they going, what are they trying to achieve. So all of these things are important to understand, and every single time it's going to be different. So you can't just lift what another company does and do it in your organisation. You have to bespoke it. That's where the beauty is when you actually really understand your company, who you are as a company, who your staff are. You can then build these types of things on top of that because it's aligned and everybody's bought in. Otherwise, you spend a load of money and time doing it, and then they probably won't even respond.
Yeah.
Or you'll have a really low engagement rate or something.
Yeah, and if you were trying to implement this in, say there's a workplace with high turnover, and obviously people are miserable there because it's got a high turnover because that's it, or they're only going to go into that job for so long, but the job itself is devalued by that. You can't just come in and start applying these things because it'll never take, because no one's staying there long enough. You have to start going, right, how do we retain people? Right, we've started to retain people. How do we now build a culture? You have to put the things in place. Because you're bringing people in and they either fit or they didn't fit. And if they didn't fit, you learn and they leave.
They've got to leave. Yeah, exactly. And we've had people that didn't fit and they've left. It's not, and that's not personal. That's just, if they don't fit, they can't stay because we've spent so long building the culture.
Depends where they are as well in their own journey.
Yeah. But they also agree they don't fit. I think that's the thing. It's like sometimes people think that that's what they want. Yes. They want something different, but actually they're quite institutionalised as to doing things in a different way. Yeah. And that's okay.
And it's like, I thought I wanted this, but I'm not ready for this. I can't come in on a Monday and be happy and tell you how I feel.
Yeah. Well, also, some people are like, I don't get the flexibility. I'm so used to having so much structure. Yeah. I'm so used to being told what to do. And so many people are used to that.
That's a huge thing now. Yeah. So many people just are waiting for someone to tell them what to do. And it's like,
you have to be a self-starter.
You can do stuff.
Yeah. Well, I think that's what I've really what I've really embraced is encouraging my team to really think for themselves. So, from an innovation perspective, if they think we can do something better, tell me how we can do that. We've got an innovation committee that we meet quarterly, and we'll implement a strategy around those changes. And because it's just me that owns the business, I can be like, right, yeah, tomorrow we can change that. Let's go. We don't have to wait a year and let something go wrong before we change something. And I think leaders need to be more open to what people in their teams think could be done better, because we don't have the answers. And that's also how you build psychological safety, because you're hearing them, you're listening to them, they feel heard, they trust you because you then action it. And guess what? You start to get a better feedback loop. So there are ways that you can start to build your trust that aren't just through training. I think training is important for the senior leadership team to understand what is psychological safety, how do we create this, what are our gaps, where do we need to work on. That's important. But from a team level, the only way to get the staff to open up more is if they build the relationship with the managers. So management training is so important, because how many managers become a manager because they're really good at the job? And then all of a sudden they're managing 50 people, and they're not a people person.
And how many of them have had any management training?
Usually zero.
I think it's about 30%.
Yeah, it's really low. It's really low, especially in the legal sector, because often you become a manager because you've got a promotion because you're a good lawyer.
Yeah. Yeah.
No people skills taken into consideration.
Yeah, which is totally the thinking of it. I mean, it sounds like it makes sense, doesn't it? But it's like, but you want someone who's good at managing to be a manager.
Yeah, exactly. So you do see this a lot, and a lot of what we spend our time doing is training managers. Is actually, if we can get the managers to a point where they can trust their teams trust them, then we find that there's a lot less grievances, there's a lot less need for legal support, because actually the managers have the confidence and the skill set to have the difficult conversations, to know what to say and what not to say, know when to bring HR in and not. And some of this stuff is really simple, but we find ourselves again and again and again training in this space because
people panic though,
they panic,
because they don't know what to say. And you know, I hate to use the term political correctness gone mad, but people are afraid of saying the wrong thing, and especially in a workplace. And I mean, we've all had instances where people are not afraid of saying anything at all to us in workplaces and other places. But there is a lot of, if you mention something, people will freeze because they don't know how they're supposed to react to it.
This is why education's important, because we do a lot of training on this point around equality and diversity. So particularly around trans rights, non-binary, or pregnancy at work, or what's acceptable, what's not. So that line of acceptability and not acceptable could go towards banter or discrimination. So it's a really, really fine line, and it really depends on the facts of the case and the words, how they were received. And so it's really difficult to say, oh, well, you know, because you might say something, me and you here today, and that's okay in this context, but take that somewhere else, it's not. So it's really interesting to see the amount. It's probably the most popular type of training other than neurodiversity is around the acceptability of what managers can and can't say. And it's not saying like we're not putting red tape around them. We're running through scenarios to say, in this situation, how would you deal with it? What would you do? You know, and then they talk about their anxieties, like, oh, I wouldn't do that because I wouldn't know what to say. Yeah, right, okay, so now we can work out, now we know what the problem is, we can work it back and put an action plan in place so that when you are in this situation, you know exactly what you need to do. And you might not get it right, but you know, you've got the skills to draw upon rather than freezing. And not doing anything, or rather than just saying the wrong thing and then making it worse. So I find that this space is the most interesting space, because this is the difference between really needing a lawyer and not. Because if you can get this right and your staff understand and they have that awareness of the correct language to use, of what's inclusive, what's not, what on how you deal with things, how you remain active, not passive. When they deal with that, you find that the need for the legal support as in claims is massively reduced. Like, none of our clients get sued because they're touch wood, touch wood. But that's because they spend so much time at this beginning piece of you know, understanding their teams and also educating their teams.
I mean, I'm letting us talk about all sorts of things here and not doing the question. We'll go back and do some more questions, and then we'll probably go on to something else. But there's just so much in this. There's hours and hours of discussions to be had in this area. So let's do Brexit, which I don't think will be majorly big for you.
It hasn't impacted us, to be fair. So for us, we're English and Welsh lawyers. So for me, like, Brexit hasn't really impacted. I mean, it's not impacted the business at all.
And it's not like there's a big class action lawsuit of like, oh, this has really done my head in, this Brexit.
No. I mean, Brexit will change some of the employment laws eventually, but so will Labour, who've just come in. So, and I'm on the employment law committee for the Law Society, so we're part of that consultation. And you know, there was going to be that sunset clause where all the EU legislation was going to disappear, but it didn't, thankfully, because that would have been a bit of chaos.
What you mean, all our laws as well?
Yeah, exactly. So like, some of it's embedded in domestic, some
our laws
not.
are theirs.
So yeah, from my perspective, the impact of Brexit has mainly been around the legislative changes or the proposed changes that might occur. We still have EU case law that's relevant.
But it was like a little practice, wasn't it, before COVID, of like, can you keep up with what the government is saying today?
Yeah, literally, like a test run, and then the world went to shit.
Okay, so no major changes for Brexit. Let's do climate change, and then we'll go into social media. I think there'll probably be more for social media.
Yeah.
But with regards to climate change, Leeds has declared a climate emergency. Is there anything that you can do in your work with regards to adaptation, mitigation, what was the other one? Oh, awareness raising. But I think everyone's kind of aware of it.
Yeah, so, I mean, certainly, have you spoken to Kate Hutchinson, the Yorkshire Sustainability Festival?
No, not yet. No.
Okay, so she runs a whole conference each year in Leeds on this topic. So climate change, I mean, certainly for us, it's not really anything. I mean, obviously it's relevant to us, but we all work remotely. I've just brought in electric cars for the team and also myself. And yeah, we don't even print. So, you know, in terms of like our sustainability, we have quite a low carbon footprint anyway. So certainly from a business perspective, it's something that we look at every year. But there's not a lot we can change at the moment because of the nature of the fact that we've already done a lot of it indirectly, you know, just by working remotely and not having, you know, lights on all the time because we're not in an office.
Forcing everyone to be vegan, that's pretty much...
No, God no. Well, there's a question as to whether that is better for the climate as well. So.
Well, one of the things that I was going to say was, so two things. Firstly, the hottest day, when it was 39 degrees in 2022, where were you? Were you in the workplace or were you at home?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
Probably at home.
But those things are going to come up a bit more frequently, as and other events as well.
But there's no requirement for, I don't think there's a law, is there, around health and safety for the hottest temperature?
No, which there needs to be.
There isn't one, which I find insane, because this room that we're in right now is our boardroom, and this actually does get really hot, and you can see in the corner there's an aircon unit over there, because that is actually needed, because this room is like a glass room.
Well, that's it, these buildings, and so they're next to other buildings.
Yeah.
They're basically just convection heaters.
So hot.
Big thermal mass.
Yeah, but in terms of like at the moment the weather's crazy, right? Like we were just saying, you know, you can't plan how to leave the house. You've got to pack a whole suitcase for all eventualities.
Well, and I think we're going to have to start paying serious attention to weather warnings of because you know, like even in Leeds now, you can be out somewhere and gallons of water will just fall on you, and you know things could start drifting by you, and it can get so hot. I mean, with the Michael Mosley story, just you know the heat getting so hot in Greece that's just killing people, and climate anxiety and stress and so on in terms of mental health. I mean, if I was working here and I was in law, you would probably be sick of me going on about climate. But that would be a major worry for me of we're not kind of doing enough. I think that's something that it'll become a bigger issue.
I think it's difficult, isn't it, when there's a lot of agendas that employers have to push. And I think for a lot of employers, they are, so say if you're in a factory, I always feel like, well, actually there's a lot more that they can look at in terms of how they can be better from an environmental perspective. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, and then put the various safety features in.
Yeah, exactly. You know, But when you work remotely, mostly, and actually we don't even have an office we're that sustainable. We share one with our staff, our staff share with our clients. So, you know, rather than going and getting our own office that then would be empty in the week, we just share with someone else. So we've thought about it in lots of different ways, but I don't think certainly from our perspective, we push CSR, but we don't push it on just a climate on a climate focus. That's not really, it's not who we are, because we have such big agendas in the ED&I and the mental health space, but it is something we're aware of and we do, but it's not our focus, I'd say, for the type of company that we are, if I'm being really honest. Because I think that's important. Like, you can't say you do everything to, you know, the nth degree. But, you know, doing salary sacrifice for the electric cars and things like this, encouraging people to use more efficient, energy efficient, you know, ways of working or transport, all of this stuff is important.
Yeah. Okay, social media. Which I think will be fairly big, because I get the impression you probably either you've got big plans to, or you already have done a lot in the area.
Yeah.
So what I want to look at for this is the return on investment for you. How much time do you spend on it? Yeah. And sort of doing social media as you work, and does it give you the return on investment on that time that you want?
Okay, so for me, starting my own law firm at 29 with no marketing budget and no investors and no finance, social media was the only way for me to market my business. So I started to build a personal brand as well as a business brand at the same time. And I would say that they were intrinsically linked until about 2-3 years ago, in the sense of Thrive was Jodie, Jodie was Thrive, because it was me. But as I've started to grow, I've separated those two things out. And then a couple of years ago, I created my own website, jodiehill.co.uk. That's all my speaking and the stuff that I do on my own. And that's my personal stuff. But I'm always talking about topics that are important to Thrive, because obviously my values are Thrive's values. So it's interchangeable. So how it works at Thrive at the moment is I run my own accounts. So I do my own Instagram, I do my own, which shares onto my Facebook, because I don't do Facebook because it's the same thing really as Instagram. I do my own LinkedIn, and I post almost daily. And I do my own TikTok, which I don't do that much on, because I find because you have to do video content takes longer. So I'm actually getting someone to help me create and edit the videos once a month, and then they'll help me with that. But essentially I'm creating all the content for Jodie. For Thrive, I have a consultant who supports us and does like maybe 3 posts a week on LinkedIn and Instagram, and I think sometimes on Twitter, or X. But we've just found that it's a bit of a dead platform, and it's not really where our ROI is. Yeah. So our return on investment is from LinkedIn. Yeah. Okay, so the LinkedIn, I have over 30,000 followers on LinkedIn. I have 26,000 on Instagram. So I have quite a big following for a lawyer, I think. What that means is, whenever I go networking now, people will talk to me because they recognise me. So again, it helps me from a brand perspective, because the right people are talking to me because they're interested. They already know what I talk about, so they're interested in talking to me. So I really hated networking and being neurodivergent, having to go make small talk with people. Whereas if they come up to me and go, "Oh, I saw that post," straight away we've got something to talk about and I'm in a safe place. So for me, it's been really helpful from that perspective, growing brand Thrive. It's also grown my personal brand. It's also got me on TV, radio, TikTok. I ended up doing a Channel 4 documentary, Untold series, as the expert on, and had to go to London to film it and stuff. And I've ended up doing Steph's Pat Lunch and all of these things. And I have a YouTube channel as well, which again, I don't really put anything on because I don't have a marketing manager at the minute. So I haven't got anyone to help me do so what I'll do it with YouTube is I record it and they put it on for me and market it. But yeah, so I've found personally, without social media, we wouldn't be where we are today. And a lot of our inquiries come through my personal social media rather than Thrive's. People by people. And so I'm actually, ironically, posted a post this morning on LinkedIn about personal brand and why do people not invest in their personal brand for their team? Why do they stop them posting on LinkedIn? I find it insane, because if my team are all posting in a similar way to me, our reach is so much bigger. And over time, yes, they're going to develop their own personal brand, but within Thrive. And obviously they can take that with them when they leave. But the reality is, they're building a voice, they're creating their own identity. And that's part of this whole piece that I'm talking about bringing your whole self to work. So you want them to be able to do that. And I think doing that on social media is important. I think with social media, you need to be authentic. There's too much of this showing the highlight reel. And it's not to say you have to post pictures of yourself crying, but if I have a shit day, I actually post about it. And I'll say, do you know what? For me, this week has been really tough, and this is why. And this is why I'm grateful I've got a team I can talk to. This is why I'm grateful I've got, the support that I have in place, because life isn't always good. I've been struggling loads over the last few months. Loads of things have been happening, and it's up and down. It's like this weekend I had to cancel all my plans and just take it slow because I'm overwhelmed, so I talk about that because you've got to keep it real. I think when people just broadcast what they're doing, like, oh, we won this award, it's a bit broadcasty. So for me, social media is about showing like, who are you and what do you stand for? And it doesn't mean selling your services all the time. You'll see in my posts, I very rarely talk about actually Thrive. I talk about things that are important or things that we've done that I'm really proud of, or something about the team. But I won't say a whole post saying, and we sell training on these topics. I never do that. But it still means that when people want to work with us, they'll message us. So like after lockdown, loads of businesses contacted me and they were like, your free support that you gave in lockdown was amazing. Been following you on LinkedIn. We're now in a position, can we pay monthly for your HR package? Absolutely you can. And then they've become really good friends. So actually I find that my LinkedIn friends and my Instagram supporters are actually, they're on it. You know, they're there, they like and share everything. More so than your real life friends, actually. Because when you set up a business, you know, you're in a world where you're in a different space to what your friends are used to. So yeah, I found that the support from my online community is unbelievable. In fact, today I received, and I'll have to give you one, I received a packet of brownies from someone who saw me speak at a talk that I did last week, the one I was telling you about. And she was like, this is super empowering. I've been following you on social, like you're a true inspiration. Thank you. You've really helped me with X, Y, and Z. Here's a gift from me. And it was just, I've never had that before, but that just shows the impact you have on people as well. You don't always know who's watching.
Yeah, well, you never know who's watching.
Yeah, and actually with social media, it's really hard to measure an ROI because you've got two areas. You've got what converts to sales, but you've got brand awareness, and your brand awareness.
You've got reaching that person who might spend £1 billion on you or whatever, you know, like.
Or they might not. You know, I'm working with a company now who randomly I used to teach at university a HR masters, so I taught this person 8 years ago, and she followed me on social and. She followed me on social for all this time. And then randomly, she's at a huge organisation, one of the biggest ones in Leeds. And she messaged me. She was like, we're working with one of the top law firms in Leeds, but we don't want to work with them. So I've been following you for years. We want to work with you. And like literally came out of nowhere. I didn't even I've taught that many people. I wouldn't have remembered her, you know, other than having the conversation. So it just shows like that person was waiting 8 years in the background, just watching until the moment was right. So that's why consistency on social media is so important, and being yourself and showing a bit of personality, because people will go, in fact, this jumpsuit I'm wearing today is because somebody came up to me at the last conference and said, I've seen this jumpsuit, it's got you written on. I don't know this person. But I share like sometimes my bright clothes, and people are like, you need to, so I Googled it, I was like, purchase. Very impulsive. But they feel like they know you, so they're more likely to refer stuff to you as well. So this is the other side of it, is the referrals that come through. And the opportunities it creates. So it's open doors. It's got me onto stages I don't think I would have got on otherwise, in front of, you know, global audiences. I've been over to, I spoke at the Legal Disruptors Conference in lockdown. Actually, it was in the second lockdown, but you were allowed to travel for work. So I flew to Prague and I had to speak at this conference on this stage, and it was just the most bizarre thing because half the room were obviously online in the end. But it's like 2,500 people talking about like my firm, but I would never have done that if I hadn't have shared stuff on social, because that's where it came from. And I do think as a founder, you mentioned earlier about feeling lonely. I find it incredibly lonely. What the online community offers is that relatability. There's a lot of other founders in the same place, you know, like there's I suppose that level of comfort that you don't always get from normal life as well, you know.
Well, and it's that thing as well as, isn't it? It's like, there's, you know, so-and-so that makes bananas and so-and-so that sells beans, and it's like, we have the same problems.
Yeah, exactly. We have the same problems, and we have also similar interests, and you start to learn that when you follow people. So in terms of the amount of time I spend, so I spend probably an hour to 2 hours a day on social media, I'd say, but no, probably less actually. It depends how quick I write a post. So if I'm having to create a video, then obviously that takes longer. But what I'm now doing is having 1 day a month, full day for content creation, and then I will record the videos. I will work out when we're going to post them, and then it's upfront done, and then I can schedule some of them. But most of them I just do on the fly because I see something and I feel something. So if I'm on a train, I usually do it then. Or, you know, funny, when I go to Dubai for work, I'll write a load on the plane because I'm like, my mind is free because there's no computers for a while. And so I'll just brainstorm some ideas and write them in my notes. So I've got a couple to go if I feel like I've got a bit of a writer's block or I'm too busy. So it's taken me a while to get to that point. I did try to outsource it once, my personal page, but the engagement was really bad. It didn't sound like me. And I was like, this is wrong. Like, it needs to be me. So the Thrive posts I don't do. They are done by a marketing consultant who knows our brand really well. And essentially she will create a month's worth of content, and then we go through it and we plan it around what's happening and keeping it relevant. And then I tell her what I'm going to do from a personal perspective so we can make sure it all links. But I'd say that this is one of the areas that actually, as a lawyer, I wouldn't have expected I would excel in, but it's probably one of the areas that I do because I've literally done it all myself with no training, no support. And actually for me, it all came down to just being myself and just unmasking and just really stripping it back.
Yeah, I mean, it's going back to the journaling thing. I mean, like, how much of it is you defining yourself within that? You know, like rebuilding yourself, sort of thing. Of like, you know, how people, they go away to reinvent themselves or they go into a new role, but like, to a degree, that's not so much reinventing yourself as creating yourself or being the author of yourself, I suppose. It's hard to go out there into a social media space and just be like, because you've got to have certain hashtags that you have to have the labels to define who you are so that you can be put in the relevant areas to be seen. Do you get what I'm getting at with this?
Yeah, so I think that there is a technical skill to it, and you just have to, I mean, I haven't ever had any training, but I think for me it was always about like trial and error and like what works, what doesn't work, and just I looked at other people's profiles who did well and looked at their like how they structured their titles, you know, little things like this. So there's Leah from LinkedIn, she does really great training on it. I know one of my friends has done a course with her, but I actually asked her once if she'd do some training with me, and she was like, I don't think you need it. Like, you know, she's like, obviously there are things you can improve on, but I don't think like this is for like people who don't really know how to use it. Yeah, I do think there is this technical thing. And the challenge with social media is it's always changing. So the algorithm changes a lot. So sometimes they want short videos, sometimes they want hashtags, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they want you to post, you know, at certain times of the day, and your certain times of the day might be different to someone else's. You can't know all of that, but don't worry about that stuff. Just get used to posting. And then when you've built a bit of a personal brand, then you can start to worry about that, is what I think, because you want to get that consistency and that routine first. And I always think, try and post at like the beginning or the end of the day, like when people are like scrolling on their phones, you know, because that's what happens before 9 and after 5. I always think is the best time. I am not a social media expert, but it seems to me as though you get better engagement around those times for me. But you know, if you're doubting yourself, just try it, see what happens. I mean, it depends who your market is and where they're hanging out.
Yeah. Does it help you think out loud though? Do you think at this point? Do you use it as a space to sort of like, kind of, I'm thinking this, I'm wondering this, I've kind of formulated it, what do people think, how does that
go? I do think it does, and I certainly now, I used to post a lot more on Instagram, and now I'm more like, I think my posts are more LinkedIn, and I think...
Because you want that feedback.
Yeah. And it's a different
you want to learn from it as well, you don't just want to be like, look at me!
I'm not broadcasting, I'm always asking questions, or I'm always sharing something that I want someone's opinion on.
Yeah.
So, you know, like an example was after I did an event a few weeks ago at a conference in London, it was so overstimulating, I had a bit of a meltdown the next day, and I wasn't feeling very well. So on the day of the conference, I shared this video, and I was so productive, and the day after, I shared how I actually felt the day after, because it was different. And then I said, actually, what I think would be really helpful here is if you can all share your comments, and feel free to DM me if you don't want to put it on here, is what could we do differently about events to make them less overstimulating for neurodivergent people? How can we create a guide that supports the speakers, the delegates, and the organisers? And then off the back of that, the CEO of the organisation messaged me on Instagram and was like, when you've created that, I'd love to talk to you. And he's emailed me, and it's created a really good conversation. But because I had to think about it to write, if I'd have just thought about it in my head and not written it down, that idea would never have come, because I'd have just been like, I feel shit today. That's quite common. But because I had to articulate it in writing publicly, I would say had to, because I wanted to. Yeah. I then was thinking, well, what's my call to action for people? What do I want people to do as a result of this? I don't want them to feel sorry for me. Obviously, that's not what it's there for. It's about showing the ups and downs. But then I'm thinking, well, is there something we can do about it? So it created an idea off the back of me being able to reflect. So it's almost forcing you to be more intentional with reflection, because I'm not a natural reflector. Yeah. I just dive straight in a lot of the time. So this is, I do think it is a way to help you reflect a bit about how...
We're not trained to though, are we?
Some people are natural reflectors, some people aren't, but I'm a pragmatist. I'm an activist and a pragmatist. I'm not a reflector or a theorist. You have to, as I said, be intentional about it. And then social media is quite a good way to do that. But you do have to remember, you know, you are posting to millions of people, and, you know, you're not in your home right now. You're posting to the world. Yes. So you have to be mindful, like, what are you happy to share? Because you do get trolls. You do get people who are not very nice.
Yeah. But the other side of that as well is that when there is the fear of posting, is that nobody could see it as well.
Yeah.
You know, especially if you're starting out.
Yeah.
Make mistakes. Feel free to make mistakes because nobody's ever going to see it.
And the thing is, like, you might think for ages about a post and be like, oh my God, no one's going to like it. Don't delete it. Leave it there. Leave it. Because the people that delete it, you're always going to get in this cycle of, well, it's not good enough. It's not good enough. You have to just keep posting. You have to keep connecting with the right people. Connect with people at social events. Connect with people, you know, in your network who you know, but maybe aren't connected with on LinkedIn because they're likely to engage with you because they know you. So, you know, try to approach it in that way. When I speak at an event, I will add all the speakers. And I will, you know, I'll speak to people. And then if I add them before, then they'll talk to me when I get there because they're like, oh, I recognise you. I've got you on LinkedIn. Yeah. So it can be a really, really helpful tool to really support you with like overwhelm, and it can take over your life. But if you use it in the right way and you limit it, which is what I do, I don't really go on it much in the day. So I'm like top and tail. I'll do some in the morning and some in the evening, maybe at lunchtime if I know there's something happening, or if I'm at an event I might post some more stuff. But I think you have to work out a healthy relationship with social media because you can doom scroll forever. And if you are like me and get a bit of a dopamine hit from it, which is what a lot of people will do. But if you're ADHD, you can get into a rabbit hole. So that's another reason I'm getting someone to help me with TikTok, because I'm like videos. I go down a little hole. So you have to work out who's your client, where are they hanging out? Yeah. You know, are your clients hanging out on TikTok, or are they on LinkedIn, or are they on Instagram, or are they neither? Work that out. And for me, it's a bit of a mixture because we do business and individual advice. So my clients are in different places. And actually different demographics are on different platforms as well. So, but I would say try one platform. If you haven't done anything on social, try one platform. Don't overcommit yourself. I use very similar content on LinkedIn and Instagram now, quite similar in terms of any work-related stuff. Whereas before, they used to be totally different. Yeah. But LinkedIn has changed a lot. It's a lot more personal now. Yeah. And there's a lot more images and videos, whereas LinkedIn used to be all about the text and very business focused. I feel like LinkedIn is a bit more personal, which is helpful because my brand is more personal. So for me, that's why I've excelled on there more recently.
Yeah, I think it suits that better as well. Yeah. Like, you know, 'cause
it's really less corporate Colin.
Yeah, for a professional sort of social media or professional media, it needs to be slightly fun and especially, you know, for a UK work culture of like humour's a big part of how we work.
Yeah. So I think for me, certainly social media's played a huge role in who we are today and who I am as part of my personal brand. And it also will play an even larger role as I develop more on TikTok, because I believe that's the space that's really going to take off in the next few years for because TikTok is seen as like, well, you know, all the young people are on there and there's not really any businesses. But the reality is, there are a lot of people
There's loads of businesses on there.
There's loads of businesses on there, but there's also a lot of people who have jobs, who might leave their job and need our advice. There's also a lot of founders who might be in their 20s who only use TikTok. They're not LinkedIn. So you have to, for me certainly, I think it's the space where I can develop and grow into, and that's my strategy for the next 12 months, is to really focus on that platform. I will still be doing stuff on the other platforms, but I'm going to focus on 3 areas of content. So this is an exclusive. So 3 areas of content. And the reason why I want to talk about this is because having a bit of a strategy behind it is helpful, because then when you get a bit lost, you can be like, well, this is something I haven't spoken about for a while. So 3 areas are employment law, obviously, and HR. So all of the like all the legal updates from the elections. What do these changes mean? It's interesting case law. And then best practice. Then I'm going to do loads of ADHD content, so raising awareness about the different traits of ADHD, the challenges, the pros, the cons, medication, diagnosis, all of that. So that's more personal, but also links with the employment law. So there's all of that there. And then the final piece is I'm going to do a section on dopamine dressing. Hear me out. So everyone's probably thinking, why the hell would you talk about what clothes you wear? The reason for that is partly because as an ADHDer, one of the things I've noticed is I'm really drawn to bright colours, and I've been talking about this in a way on LinkedIn, and it's blown up like dopamine dressing. It's this whole piece around making you feel good, dressing for your day, and also not dressing like a typical lawyer. So bringing your true self to work. So each week I'm going to just post something about what I've worn, why I wore it, and just something fun that's a bit of a personality, but it's really authentic to me because I love fashion, and I can love fashion and be a lawyer. That's okay. And showing that side of me, I think, will help people to see, like, I'm not just talking about legal changes, you know, because that's not me. I have these different facets of me, and I think it's important to show that. And because I've done social for such a long time now, I feel more comfortable in doing that, whereas, you know, maybe 2 years ago I wouldn't.
Yeah.
So that's my plan for social, is to continue to use it in a really positive way, to raise awareness of important issues, to help me change the law, and to help grow the business.
Yeah. Well, that's a good little clip for the internet, isn't it? So we've done session meeting. We've done all the change question, all the affected questions. So let's do the change question. We've kind of touched on this and sort of spoke about it before we started recording. As a workplace founder and owner, you can change a lot of these things, but the question is, if you could change any 3 things about your work, what would you change? So you could do maybe the simple things that you're going to change, and maybe like 3 ideal ones, or you could, I suppose, the law is a big one that you want to change. So I mean, I don't think it would be too hard to find 3.
Yeah. So I think, so the first thing that I would change, if I could change anything, is the law, because I do believe that it's outdated. I mean, 75 was when the Act was created. So I think the legislation needs to be more aligned with the workforce that we have now. You know, in the 70s, the workforce was very different. And so we need to account for the additional risks that we now have and the different ways of working. So if I could change anything in the world, it would be to be changing the law around workplace mental health and getting parity between mental and physical health when it comes to assessing risk and supporting people. Because I feel like mental health still doesn't have the same parity as physical health, because physical health has all of these like risk assessments and all these different things that you have to be mindful of, like, you know, all the COSH rules and all the desk assessments and the PAT tests, all of the physical stuff, physical risks, it's all there. There isn't anything for mental health. And so I've been working on drafting a law, which actually I've done a first draft, which will be a secondary piece of legislation, which would sit underneath the Health and Safety Act as a way to guide employers how to do this, rather than just putting more red tape. I don't want to do that. I want to create a framework that is both strategic but also legislative, to help guide people down the right path, rather than... And
kind of overarching
across any business, any size.
The macro level.
Yeah.
So it's not like every individual business has to reinvent this thing from scratch.
They interpret it in their business,
Here, because as much as it's like telling you what to do, it's telling you what to do. It's like, you don't have to think about it because we've done the thinking here.
Yeah.
Not that it's always perfect and it shouldn't be revisited, but it's like, here's the framework. Here's an answer for you to start. It's a starting point. It's a foundation. It's like, you can do more than this. Yeah. But this is like what we've kind of gone, this is the bare minimum. This is how.
So I'd like to create new legislation, and then alongside that a guide or a code of practice that essentially is the more of the how-to. So the framework being the legislation, and then the how-tos and what it means and how you interpret that information, so that any business of any size anywhere in the UK could use it to support their teams to create more psychologically safe workplaces. So that would be, you know, the main thing, because it's quite a big thing, and obviously creating the training that goes with that, and, you know, making sure that organisations know what to do, I think is really important. In terms of other changes, what you mean as in like a change from my actual workplace or workplaces generally?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I suppose there's somewhere, you know, and I suppose you've made a lot of changes. You know that you can make changes and implement them, which is, you know, that's a learning curve in itself.
Yeah. Actually, no,
I do. Like little short-term ones that you want to hit, or like, does it get harder to find things that you want to improve?
No, my team absolutely are always. Well, I'm assuming that they're dreading it at times when I'm like, I've got another idea. So at the moment, what we're actually building our own Gen AI. So we've already built it. We've been training it for the last 9 months. And what I would like to see in terms of change is
it okay, or has it said anything offensive yet?
No, it's not said anything offensive yet. It's just not quite there in terms of some of the legal stuff yet. Okay. But it is. It's really helpful. for lots of different things, and it's really been supportive for the junior team. And one of the things that I'd really like to see is to change how we use Gen AI in workplaces. Certainly for us, we use it and we're quite proactive, but I'd like to create a guide that goes with that, and like, because with Gen AI, you've got to give it the right prompt. You've got to talk to it in a way that it understands. So I'd like to change how we use that and be more proactive with it, so that eventually we can give it to our clients to use. So they could go, Jodie, I've got this employee and they want to do this. How do I do it? And it just spurts the answer out, because it's our collective knowledge in the robot. Like, that's how I want to build it. The second change that I'm looking to make this year is, I've actually got two more changes. The second change is automations. So looking at how we can use automations within the organisation, which we already have in some places, but we're moving legal case management software to look at how we can automate things like the onboarding, any drafting of basic documents, things like this. So I want to, this year I've got a plan for an AI and automation strategy. So basically like an innovation team where we will go through all of the things that we want to change in the next 12 months and then prioritise those and cost them all up and everything. So that's something I really want to change. And the reason I want to change that is to make legal services more accessible, but also to mean that we don't have to work as many hours to add the same value.
Yeah.
Which takes me on to my final change, which is I want to move to complete value-based pricing. So what I mean by that is, at the moment, we have about 50% value-based pricing, which is, this is a fixed fee and this is what it costs. Yeah, this is the value of what you are getting. Now, traditionally, law firms charge by the hour. And that is a really profitable way to work because you round it up to 6 minutes, okay? However, if I answer a question that nobody else knows the answer to in 2 minutes, is the value of that advice only what I spent doing? Or is it the 20 years behind? So there's that side of it. The other side is, if you're using automations, you can actually get rid of the time that it takes to do things and start to charge fixed fees. And the other thing is, actually, a lot of the time lawyers get beaten by their clients because of costs, because they never know what the cost is going to be. Now, we circumvent that by charging fixed prices or, paying up front with blocks of hours so that people know what they're spending and they can manage it. And we also give very, very clear updates all of the time. So we'll never say it's going to be £8,000 and then charge you 30. We would never do that. I mean, if any of, my staff just wouldn't do that. That's just not how we are. But what I think as well is it improves the customer journey, because you're managing expectations to an extent that they know they're going to get X, Y, and Z for that fixed fee. It doesn't matter how long it takes or when, unless you've obviously agreed a deadline. But as in, they don't care how many hours you take to do it. You've said you'll do it for that fixed fee. So sometimes you might spend more time and you've got to suck it up. Yeah. But other times you might spend less time. And so what we want to focus on over the next 12 months is how can we move fully to a values-based pricing model where people have a fixed fee for everything. And we don't have to time record, imagine. And we don't have this, because, with litigation, how long's a piece of string? Is it a 12-day hearing? Is it 10 witnesses, 3? So we'd have to think of all the variables. So there's a lot of work to do, but you don't have to quote it all up front. You could quote it in stages. There are ways that you can approach it. And so it's something that we've been doing for a while with our training and with some of our HR stuff. But I want to bring it in firm-wide, because I think that will take us to the next level in terms of our unique proposition, to be able to say this is what it costs, this is like a fixed amount.
So do you have a sort of, I'm going to have to use the term because I can't think of another one, like a minimal viable products for it, of like, okay, so your average client, they're going to need like 5 hours of law, they'll need an hour of this, 2 hours of that. So if we put it in, bit of a discount there's your basic packaging. Because a lot of the time, most people want it, it's just like, how much does it cost? How much does what cost? Like, how much of it do you want? What do you want?
What do you want?
It's like, I don't know, I need you, and tell me, and I'll give you money.
Yeah, so this is it. So we have got the reason why we haven't fully moved over yet is because we've been looking at the data. So we wanted enough data to look at like the average, so say we've got 200 claims that are really similar. What was the average time spent? Who was involved the most? So we can work out the value of the work, not the time spent. Yeah. Because value is intrinsically linked to time when you're a lawyer, and I need to get people's brains out of that. And go, actually, no, it's not about just how long it took. Because, it might have taken 12 hours, but did it take 12 hours because that person was junior? therefore it's not worth 12 hours time. Do you see what I mean? And that's why the hourly rate is lower, because they're junior. So rather than thinking of it in this way, I want to try and move towards a model that is quite data driven. There is a tech company in America that have a model that you can input the data, and then if you put the data in, say I have a new client, I put the variables in and it quotes for me.
Yeah.
So we're looking to create a manual version of this to start with, because obviously we need the data, and then from there integrating that into our onboarding process, so people can literally just get a quote. You know, it's really easy access, and that should make it more accessible for people, because they can get a quote straight away. You don't have to think, oh my God, how much would you charge for that, and scope it out. You have a set amount of questions that you would ask for the variables, that goes into the system and it tells you the fixed price. Done. Sounds simple, it's a lot more complicated than that, but that's quite a big change. That's a huge change, because it's not how any other law firms really do it.
Yeah.
And also the mindset is difficult to change when you're already in it, when you're thinking on a time spent basis. So recruitment and things like that, you have to really think about your onboarding of your new staff and your training of your staff to get them to understand the value-based model. So there's quite a lot to go at with on this, and those are all intrinsically linked, because if you're developing the tech and the values-based model at the same time, they kind of work together really, because the value of something is also going to take into account the cost of the tech to build it. So there's quite a lot to think about, but yeah, they are the internal changes that we're looking to make, because I think the future of law is going to be very much focused on the people side. Will be talking about the problems, but the doing and the instant access to quick answers to questions will be the tech. And I think lawyers that don't move towards that are going to fall behind. Because the tech is so clever now. It's so clever. It can literally write something like I wrote it. It's so clever. But this is my own tech. I would caveat with ChatGPT hallucinates a lot, and it also isn't accurate legally. I've put in so many policies to test it against our one.
It wants you to spend more time on it. It just wants attention.
People go, it's very American as well. So people go to me, oh, well, I've just done a policy on ChatGPT. I'm like, well, you might get a framework on there, but it's not going to be legally compliant. No. And it also isn't going to ask you the questions that you need to know to answer that bit of the policy. So yeah, we are actually going to talk a little bit about this, because I've noticed a few companies using them, and it's not to say happily send me a version of it and we'll make it right, but the versions that they're spouting, I haven't seen one that's like fully accurate yet. Certainly things like contracts and that, where you've got Section 1 compliance and things like this. So policies, you know, if you're happy with it and you think it covers everything, fine, but you've got to think about why do you ask a lawyer to do it, and there is tech that can do it, but it's what we've done is we've put all of our shared knowledge into our tech. So every advice we've ever done, every blog I've ever written, every template I've ever used is in my tech. So that's how we can do it, is because we've actually built it in a way that talks like us. And it's not on the internet and loads of other random people's answers from a random blog on some American's website. It's not that. Yeah. So using AI in the right way is really important. And I think workplaces need to change their outlook on the use of AI and automations, because the reality is it's here, it's coming. And if you don't embrace it, you're going to find actually there are organisations who are able to overtake what you're doing and take your staff as well.
Yeah, but you're only ever talking to a certain portion. I mean, how much did we hear about you got to have a website and you got to have...
And people didn't do it, yeah.
For all this, and we got to 2020, so at least 30 years of people, and we'd even stopped having the conversation because we're like, everyone's got a website. And then we hit to 2020, and then all these businesses went, oh, we better get online.
Yeah. Honestly, it's so funny. So yeah, it's a really exciting time to live, but the pace that the tech is developing now is really interesting. And you know, we started building in like August last year, and we're now in a place where it can do things I didn't think it'd be able to do, and it's constantly learning. And it's just interesting to see how quickly it develops. Every 3 months, I'm like, fuck, what's going on? This is amazing. It's quite scary if you're not in it.
I was going to say, so to put the cherry on that, technological unemployment, any of you afraid of being put out of work by this monster you're creating?
Absolutely not. No. So the tech can help with. It's basically enhancing what you do. It's improving efficiencies. For me, the tech is never going to take the role of a managing partner in a law firm or a solicitor. It could take some of the paralegals' jobs. It could take some of the juniors' jobs. Absolutely, because it's going to be able to do, the filing, the admin. It can do, the first drafts of things. It can do research. But there's still going to be a place for the people, because you're still going to have offices, you're still going to have physical places that you need people to be in.
And it can't interpret?
It can interpret, some of them can, but some of them are, people want to speak to people. If they have a problem with an employee, that they want to talk about a strategy first before they get the letter, for example, then they want to speak to a human that they trust, who knows their business. And then where the tech will help is they can either access the tech direct, or we can use it to speed up the response, the advice that they then get in writing, or the letter. Yeah. The paperwork, exactly. So the tech will really help with all of the drafting. And I think the future of law will be that lawyers will have to be trained on how to use tech to enhance their skill set, because before we didn't have online research. We researched in books. Then we got legal tech that we researched, and we had a whole module on legal research.
Major change to the profession as well.
Yeah.
Bringing a different type of
totally
people.
Different. Yeah. And then you can create full workforces using AI now, where they can outbound and inbound call, and they sound like a human. You wouldn't know. So there's a lot of tech out there that people aren't aware of, or are choosing not to be aware of, that actually is really quite advanced and quite accessible. Whereas, 3 years ago, that wasn't the case. Even a year ago, some of this stuff wasn't there. And the ability to embrace that is it's going to be so important for every business moving forward.
Okay, I think that's covered the change question. How are we doing for time?
Right.
We're overrunning. So if there was a UBI, how do you think that might affect your work and then potentially other people's work? So I want you to think particularly here of that time before you set up Thrive, when you were going through that difficult period. Yeah. Would it have been beneficial to just be able to
live?
Yeah, like quit your job and know that you had a regular, no matter what it is, that there was some regular income that was coming in that you were just getting.
But would that impact the economy in the sense of people go, well, I don't really need to work?
But I'm not asking.
I know.
I'm not asking the economy. I'm asking you.
Yeah, no. Well, no. It obviously would have helped when I couldn't afford to pay myself. I get that. But part of what I really
would that have been a bad thing? So one of the things that people have said is that I wouldn't necessarily have had the push to go on.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say. Yeah. So, for me, my drive is kind of, if I have this commitment, I have to meet it. That's my responsibility.
Would you have just kept tumbling down the rabbit hole and
so now I have everybody's mortgages to think of. It's a lot of pressure on my brain because I have to pay their salaries every month. Now, fortunately, we are in a really good financial position now, but that wasn't always the case. And there were some months where I was like, I don't know if I can pay the mortgage. So that again, when you're a business owner, that might be quite helpful because you go, well, we might not be able to pay, I've never been in a situation where I can't pay someone, but if you can't pay them, you've still got an employment law claim, if you can't pay them. But the reality is they're not going to get kicked out of their house. So you might be able to have, I don't know, maybe there's something there where it would have helped ease anxiety a little bit. But certainly for me, the driving force was like, I've done this myself without any help. And so that's just very much in my, recently I actually went to DWP and got some support for my ADHD, which is the first time I've ever gone for help.
Yes, we should talk about this because there are people and you don't necessarily have to have a diagnosis for ADHD with it. They're not just going to give it to anyone. But
no, you can't just go and get what you want.
I've got it, give me money.
Yeah. So with DWP, it's actually quite a difficult process because...
What a surprise.
Because ADHD is a struggle with executive functioning and the process is loads of forms.
What's it called?
Access to Work. So it's access to Work is essentially a government-backed scheme that allows people with disabilities to have funded support in their workplace. So as an individual, I didn't realise as a company owner I was eligible for this. It is not means tested. You do not need a diagnosis. And what I found really helpful with this was I actually... not helpful was the forms. I had someone to help me with that. But once I'd got through that process, which took about 6 months, by the way, it's a really long process, I was then sent to an assessor. That assessor then talked to me about how I manage my day. What do I do? What do I struggle with? And they then suggested some things that might help me. So that was a combination of physical things like a rising desk and headphones and a Remarkable to help me with noise cancelling headphones. And then they also suggested things like coaching, training on how to use iOS products and other things. So there is, I think it's up to £60,000 per person available. You absolutely don't get that when you go. It's not means tested, but the reality is they have that limit. So I actually went because I was really struggling with my executive functioning and time management, and I couldn't afford a PA. Unfortunately, they wouldn't give me one without trying this other stuff first, which I find that the difficulty you have when you're high performing is that, and you mask heavily, is that people assume that you're just fine. Yeah. And so because I have a law firm and it's successful, it's assumed that I'm still eligible for the adjustments, but not for that, because you've coped until now. Yeah. Define coped. So I was at the brink of exhaustion at this point and burnout. So in the end, I had to recruit somebody because I was going to burn myself out, because I was working weekends doing my diary and I was turning up in the wrong city and getting the wrong train. It was just a bloody nightmare. But you can get lots of different support, and you don't have to be employed, and the adjustments are yours. So if you leave that employer, they come with you. So again, it's really helpful to have that because it's yours. They can't take it off you. And obviously I specialise in disability discrimination. So, I talk about reasonable adjustments all the time, and I can't believe I didn't see this for myself, because I'm always talking about it from an employee's perspective. I'm not an employee, I'm self-employed. And so the law doesn't apply to me because I'm not an employee. So I've never put myself in that category. So my message to people would be, if you are self-employed, actually check it out, it's paid for. So all that stuff, I had to pay for it myself and got it and claimed it back. It wasn't the easiest thing, if you do it through a portal, which was really stressful, but the point is it's available, and people don't know and they don't use it. So absolutely access it. It's available nationally, it's not region specific either.
So that's all my questions.
Yes, thank you.
I normally do a bit at the end where I throw it over to you if there's anything that you want to say. If there's anything that you want to flag or promote, or anything that we've not covered that you need to
I think that's everything.
Tell anyone about any big events coming up?
We do have a Future of Work conference coming up. So we have a Future of Work conference coming up in November. It is invite only. Okay. So if you want to register on our wait list, just go to our website. There will be a landing page going live this week. Okay. So essentially we're doing it invite only because we can only fit 100 people in. So go on the wait list, and if you don't make that particular event, we'll be running another one. Cool. And we'll be focusing on lots of things from neurodiversity to AI to different routes to parenthood, how to talk about trans rights at work. So lots of really difficult topics, but interesting, thought-provoking stuff with some of the UK's leading speakers on these topics. So
excellent. Do you want to give us any socials? Or
yes. So if you want to follow me on social, it's I am Jodie Hill on all platforms. It's very easy to find, JODIE. And then Thrive is Thrive_law on all platforms, and we're on LinkedIn. So come and join our Thrive tribe. And if you want to sign up to our newsletter, we're talking quite a lot about the potential employment law changes at the minute with all the election stuff. So we'll be consulting the government and really trying to understand what does this mean for businesses and workplaces moving forward, and sending that direct to your inbox.
Cool. Well, Jodie, it's been an absolute pleasure listening to you, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you again to Jodie for being my guest. Thanks as always to all my guests, and thanks to you, Leeds, for being my subject. If you'd like to work with Jodie and Thrive Law, go to thrivelaw.co.uk. If you'd like to speak to me about one of my guests or about being a guest, then you can email Working Hours at workinghourspod@western-studios.com. If you would like to make a podcast series, don't forget you can do that and support Working Hours by buying podcast services from me, Western Studios Leeds. Email makemypodcast@western-studios.com to make your podcast. Remember, listener, no matter what you do, it's impossible for you to understand anything that your salary depends on you not understanding. Okay, that's me. Work for peace and plan with kindness. Cheers, ears. Take care out there and be kind to each other, Leeds. Working Hours is produced, recorded, edited and published by Simon Treen for Western Studios, Leeds Limited. The music was The Bees from Chopin's Etudes. which is in the public domain and was taken from museopen.org. Go to western-studios.com and use the contact page on the site to drop me a message about either working hours or about your own Leeds podcast project. Keep up to date with Working Hours and find out about the other great Leeds podcasts that Western Studios is involved with by following Western Studios Leeds on Facebook at facebook.com/western_studios_Leeds and on LinkedIn, linkedin.com/company/Western-Studios. Western Studios Leeds is available to loaners to help them realise their own podcast projects for only £30 for an hour of audio podcast work or £40 for an hour of video podcast work. Email makemypodcast@western-studios.com with details of your project and what support you want to get your Leeds podcast made. Whatever your podcast question or need, get in touch with Western Studios Leeds.